quick. Well, hello, everyone. How are you?
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm well.
Well, welcome everyone to this breakout session. Let me take just a few minutes to just introduce myself, and then I'll give Stephanie a chance to introduce herself. First of all, let me start with that I am in no means in any way an expert when it comes to technology, but I have spent many, many years in the world of technology as it pertains to facilitating hybrid educational programming. So I spent several years as a program coordinator at the university level. And we've been doing that for a very, very long time at the university level. So the big challenge was there was always this push and pull between online versus in person versus hybrid. And how do we pull that off, especially in Northern Michigan? And I have been with Gaylord Area Council for the Arts since August of 2020. So it's very short. I also just completed my MBA in 2019, and the focus of my research was brick and mortar business models in light of technology disruptors. So although the pandemic was officially the disruptor, technology has been a saving grace, I think, through all of this for most of us. Some of us, depending on where you are in your process in technology, it may be a little unknown to you. So that's a little bit about my background. So I'll kind of hand it over to Stephanie so that she can kind of introduce herself.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Same as Lisa Marie, I'm not an expert in technology. I appreciate it and I love it. And I'm obviously try to keep up to date with it. And as it falls into how important it is for our day-to-day and how important it is to keep up with your art practices as well. So yeah, I think I'm just kind of wanting to share some of the ideas, and Lisa Marie and I kind of broke things down into kind of certain expectations or kind of what we're all using these days. But please, we really were hoping this would be an engaging kind of everyone sharing ideas, since there's, technology itself is such a vague word now. Anything can be technology. But how we're all kind of using it and how we're all learning from it, we really were hoping that we could kind of all share these ideas as well. So, right, not an expert as well, but really leaning into the business side of art, and technology falls under that side of things. So.
Wonderful. So if everybody knows how to raise their hand on Zoom, if you could just raise your hand to let me know if you currently are offering some form of digital programming through, that would be wonderful. Just so that I can kind of give or put in the chat, maybe just kind of where you are with technology and your comfort level. Yep. I see we've got 2 people, it looks like, that are using it, Brooke and Kim. So just Brooke and Kim are using technology? Okay. So we're going to start out, first, let's start out with the basics of, if it's going to let me here, of technology. So everybody, I'm assuming, has a website, right? By a raise of hands, thumbs up. Everybody has a website. Okay, so there's some basic things when you look at a website, and there's some trends that are changing. So what is the purpose of a website? And Stephanie, feel free to jump in at any point. And I think this photo captures the essence of the reason why we have a website. I design and develop experiences that make people's lives simple. So really, that is the message of your website. You have a service that you're providing to fill a need for people to make their lives richer and also easier, and to help improve that quality of life. So your website's purpose really is to get that message out. What need are you filling? And in the very beginning, when websites first started, there was very few of them on the net. So I'm kind of dating myself here a little bit. But there were very few. And websites were not your first go-to. They were basically, they highlighted a little bit of who you were, maybe some services, some contact information. And then that grew. And as the need to have a website, it was really used for information, to disseminate information. And that really became the foundation. And then mobile phones and all of that fun stuff came along. And all of a sudden, we have social media, which completely changed the dynamics. And there was this push and pull between social media and websites and knowing which one to use and all of that fun stuff. So what happened really is your social media became your relationship builder platform. And your website was, once you have already built that relationship or grabbed their attention, then they went to your website to find out more about you. However, with that being said, with everything that we've gone through in the last year and a half or so, everything's pointing to the fact that your websites are going to actually need to provide both that experience, relationship building piece, as well as that information piece. It's going to become all inclusive. And we won't get into the reasons as to why, unless you want to throw something out there, Stephanie, but those really are the trends. So the importance of having a functional website and getting your information out there, and also having the ability to connect to you. Your website is your personality. It really tells everybody out there who you are. And so that's really the main purpose of your website, is to really let people know who you are and expose your website.
And if I could just jump into,
yes,
as fast as possible, it's the information that tells people about you as quickly as possible. I think I read somewhere that on social media and websites, the attention span is 3 seconds. So people make their mind up within 3 seconds of getting to your platform or to getting to your social media. So the moment they get to your website, they've already decided immediately. So the best amount of information that they can have, and the shortest amount of time. Oh no.
Absolutely. And we also, websites are moving towards more visual. But with those trends changing and moving forward, you're going to have build into your website a way to build that relationship, whether that's with vlogs or blogs that they can interact with on that website. Social media, you're starting to get lost in all of the noise with social media. So you need to have kind of that also going on your website. And so that really is the purpose. Are there any questions at this point, as far as, because we really want to have this more of a round table. So if you have questions or you have something, an experience you want to share, feel free to pop in at any moment or just raise your hand. So who knows about SEO? Does everybody know what an SEO is? Raise your hands. Do you know what it stands for? Okay. So SEO, in the simplest terms, it's your search engine optimization. And in the simplest terms, what it means is when somebody goes into their browser, whether that's Google Chrome, Firefox, Bing, Yahoo, all of the different browsers that are out there, they search art classes. Search engine optimization is basically the behind the scenes things that are going on that will list you in order. So whether you end up being the first site that's listed or you're several pages back to where they have to click several times to find you. So being on the first page in the top 10 is probably the best place you want to be. So why is search engine optimization so important? And we will get into that in a little bit. But that's something that when you're building your website, that's really important. And it really is founded on the content within your website. So search engine optimization runs on content. And it's based on the content and the words found on your website. So if you can think of 6 to 8 words that describes who you are as an organization. So think, are you theater? art classes? Northern Michigan? Do you focus on Indigenous people? Do you focus on, think of those words that describe you, and those should actually be put throughout your website. They should be on every page. In addition to that, there's metadata. Who knows what metadata is? No? Anybody? No? I'm getting lots of note takers. So metadata, and I won't try, I will not get bogged down in all the terminology, but the best way to explain metadata is it's all of the information that when you go to someone's website, they don't see it. It's the back end. It's the back side of things. So for example, for every picture that you have posted on your website, it has to be saved under a name. That name is metadata. So when you're talking about search engine optimization, you also want to have those words embedded in your metadata. So for example, if you put a picture up there and you save it as a black and white little boy, that's working against your search engine optimization and moving you up the list. Instead, if you're focused on, let's say, fine arts of Northern Michigan, you might want to entitle that picture Northern Michigan Fine Arts Black and White, because then those SEO words are captured in there. Does that make sense to everybody so far? Okay. Stephanie, did you have anything you wanted to add on?
No, I think this is really helpful. I think it might be, good to kind of move on to the website, since maybe people are more familiar with the platforms, because there's so many different platforms, and teaching ourselves how to use these platforms is kind of when we start learning what SEO is and what SSL is. And
One thing before we move on to the next platforms that I really want to share with everybody is SSL. It's secure socket layer. So this is really important. And if you're not sure, if your website, when you go to your website and the best way to tell is that if it's HTTPS, that means that you are flagged as under that SSL. So you're considered a secure site. The importance of having this is that when somebody goes to your site, if you don't have your SSL in place, what might happen is a warning comes up on their computer that says your site's not secure. And so even though it may be secure, without that certification, it will be flagged that way, and a lot of people might lose the site. So with websites, there are many platforms, as Stephanie said. How do you choose? How do you know which one to use? So a couple of the really popular ones, there's WordPress, Wix, Weebly, Shopify. I could go on and on and on, but these seem to be the most popular that are out there that most people are using or are familiar with. Okay. So let's take a look at WordPress. Sorry, I have to move everybody's faces around so I can see my screen here. So how many of you have heard of WordPress or are using WordPress currently? Anybody? Yep. Okay. Okay, we got three people that are using WordPress. So I don't know, Stephanie, if you want to speak to this specifically, since this is kind of your main platform.
WordPress, well, WordPress and Wix are kind of my go-to. WordPress is the one that I just wanted to teach myself when I first started, so I can learn more about because WordPress is the biggest beast out of all of those. More features, more ways to sell things. But learning how to use that and learning how to build it, I think was probably one of the best things I've done in my early stage of my career. Because leaning into everything after that, I was able to kind of pick up on different type of SEO. I was able to kind of understand all the other ones way better, Wix, Shopify, or different types of templates. But yeah, WordPress seems to be the most amount of features if you are trying to use but just figuring out what it is that you want to use your website for. And WordPress is probably the most advanced, I would say.
Yeah,
If you're wanting to like, yeah.
Most robust. So
Yeah.
WordPress, that's one of the strengths. First of all, 65% of all websites use WordPress. There's a reason why that. It's very you can customize it to fit any business need that's out there. It's very robust. Pretty much if you want to do it, you can do it through WordPress. It's open source coding, so I don't know if everybody knows what that means, but if you understand the language, so you have HTML and CSS, and if you understand the language, you can actually type it in. And for those of you that have done DOS way back in the day, it was kind of like you could, it's kind of like DOS in that you could, that has now been transferred to Windows. So you had to know the language to manipulate it. And then also it has WooCommerce, which is a pretty robust way for e-commerce. However, there are some weaknesses to it. It requires website design. So out of the box, you have to create it from scratch. The other thing is it's complicated sites, and a lot of times it requires plugins. So there's that additional cost depending on what you need if you're looking for art markets or e-commerce. And there's really no dedicated support for it. So if you're brand new to websites, you know very little about it, unless you have the resources and you don't have budget constraints to hire somebody in to help with that, it may not be your first go-to. Or you may be really tech savvy and willing to dig in. So there is that option. So the next options out there in the way of websites is Wix and Weebly. And I lump these two together because they're really template-based websites. They're really easy to set up. They have plugins and options to sell online. So typically they use Square. So if you already have Square set up, if you have a gallery that you're selling in person through your in-person gallery, it's really easy to connect that to a Weebly site or a Wix site. And it has pretty good site speed overall. The good thing, these are really good platforms for a beginner. So if you don't know anything, it's really easy to design your website. There's templates that you can choose that have already been made for you and designed for you that you can choose. That is a strength if you don't know anything really about design and you need something simple. You don't have a lot of requirements for your website. These websites are perfect. However, it also limits, that is a weakness. So if you need a more robust site and you have a lot of things that you want to do with your website, these platforms may not be the best for you because they do limit the templates. The other limitation is data. So if you're a data-driven organization and you really want to see where people are coming from, the types of services they're using within your website, it's very limited to the amount of data that you can get through the website that you can then apply to marketing strategies. Oh, Stephanie, you're muted.
I would think that this is a good step one, a good place to start if you just want to get your work up there fast. If you're applying to something, if you need a website, I think Wix is definitely, just finding a template, putting up your images, putting up your music, your writing. Wix is probably the best starter place to get going.
Right. And you can make it more robust by purchasing additional plugins. There's calendars, there's lots of different plugins that you can purchase, but again, that increases the cost. So any questions on that at all? No? Okay. So moving your faces around. So that kind of websites, those are kind of some things to consider when you're looking at websites. Where are you as far as your capacity to be able to oversee that website? Do you have somebody, can you afford a designer? How robust do you need? And then there's another, email platforms. So how many of you are using email platforms? And when I talk about email, I'm not referring to your personal email. I'm not referring to your organizational personal email system. These are platforms, basically software platforms, basically that allow you to send mass emails out to your complete membership. So is everybody using some form of, okay. Okay, so what I've, through my experience, and Stephanie, you can pop in here, but it seems the two most popular are MailChimp and Constant Contact. Does that seem to be about right? Can everybody kind of raise their hand if you're using one of those?
I think those two are definitely the most, and they've been around the longest, and they're also the least liked. Also, everyone seems to have to use them, but there has to be something better coming along one day soon. But I think MailChimp and Constant Contact are the ones that kind of get most of the attention, even though they're pretty struggling. They're kind of hard to still run these days.
They are. So why is it important to use an email platform? For one, if you have hundreds of members or you have hundreds of customers that you're trying, or clients that you're trying to reach, could you imagine sending that out in just a typical email format? The time that it takes is just would be unbelievable. In addition to that, a lot of times it would most likely get flagged as spam if you're blind copying that many people on an actual personal email. So that's one reason, a couple of reasons why you should consider having this.
Also, data collection. When you use these tools, you're able to see how many opens you have, how many people read it, how many people bounce back to. Which helps you understand what people are drawn to in your email. For you sending a video and people like the video better, it kind of helps you pursue what people are wanting from you specifically. So these platforms show you that data. They show you the analytics, which helps you kind of move things in the next direction or pursuing what you need to, what your audience is wanting to see.
Right. And then it also allows you to split up your audiences. So if you're a multidisciplinary arts organization to where you're focused on both, let's say, visual arts and performing arts, it will help you. It potentially could help and aid in the decision-making process of what types of programmings you're going to put on. Because if you send out an email to the performing artists and you have members that are only interested in the performing side of things, they're not going to care, and you bombard them with all the visual art stuff, you'll probably lose them in the long run and they'll stop engaging. So it's a great way to kind of follow your audience that way. So for those of you that either don't have one or consider changing your platform, there's a couple of things to consider. So there's the ease of integration. The things to think about here are the number of sends. How big is your audience? How often are you sending? And then the other thing is cost limitation. So the size of your emails that you're sending, and then automation options, which I think is really, really important here, especially if you have constraints on staff capacity. You could ultimately set up emails well in advance, spend one day and set those up, and then schedule them to go out. Do you want to add to that, Stephanie?
No, I think those are great.
Okay.
Points.
Any questions on that? Okay.
Is there anything that anybody wants us to be covering specifically that you're hoping to come from websites, or any questions you're hoping to get answers to?
So the next kind of topic we want to move on to is CRM and social media automation. Does everybody know what CRM stands for? Okay, so this is just one more platform to think about. So you have your website platform, you have your email platform, and then kind of in the middle is what is known as your customer relationship management system. And how I like to describe a CRM is it is the platform that kind of integrates and talks to both your website and your email simultaneously. And this is kind of where all of your data can be housed. So you can, depending on how robust your CRM is, you can do many, many things with it. The two popular ones, the ones that I'm familiar with, is Neon. And then my understanding is Salesforce is used pretty extensively in Northern Michigan. And I don't know, Stephanie, if you're familiar with Salesforce at all?
I'm familiar with Salesforce. Yeah, it's used by larger companies. I'm not familiar with Neon though.
So Neon, very robust. That's the one that I use on a regular basis. I can do everything to set up registrations through that to specific audiences. I can attach forms to it. I can also track who's opening and when they're opening. I can schedule automated follow-up emails. Let's say somebody registered for a class, a follow-up specialized email goes out to them. I can have a reminder set up that they did register. There's a lot of functionality with CRMs. So any questions on CRMs? No? Okay. So next really is moving on to the social media piece. And I know this is Stephanie's kind of.
Oh gosh.
And the automation of social media. Do you want to?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I think your point that you brought up to me a couple of days ago is really sticking with me, and I've already shared it with many people. How social people are moving away from social media, and they're starting to focus more on websites and kind of like the hybrid of website and social media onto their own page. I think social media is a force of good and bad. The analytics are good. Facebook is great for events, I think, and personal opinions. Instagram is great for also analytics. You can kind of, I don't know how many people have business Instagram versus personal Instagram. If you have business Instagram, you are able to see, you're able to see when your viewers are on, the best time to post. There are tools now that are free that you are able to kind of put in your entire monthly post program, and it will just automatically, schedule out into all of your Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So you don't even have to do much work anymore. And when you think of that on the big scale, all the larger companies who are already doing that, it kind of becomes very intimidating to small independent people, because the larger people who are using these platforms and the animations are really, really taking control over it, which is, how many clicks you get, how many people comment in your comment section puts you higher at the top of people's feeds. So people are playing with that and, moving that. So how you want to use social media and the force of social media is something that you can do very easily. And it can also be a time suck. And it's also a place where people are putting a lot of money into employees or assistants, because they know how important it is and how in depth the front end and the back end of all of it can go to. But I do like your point of how people are moving away from it because of all of those facts. We don't want to be bombarded. We want to be able to have a curated place. We want social media to be the things that we want to see. But as far as artists go, it's essential. So figuring out how you want to do it, how often you need to be at it. Posting every single day is pretty much what everybody says. Posting things that are informational, not personal, are getting more attention. Figuring out what the trends are and how you want to be involved in those also kind of will. But people who have a stronger social media page do have stronger sales. That's kind of how people are investing in you and how they're learning about you. So I'd say it's a pretty much must to have a social media page, probably even before a website, just because there's so many ways to get integrated and hooked up. And see your competitors and see who is also following different places. I've discovered all of the artists on Instagram. I've discovered classes, lessons, music, all of those things everywhere on Instagram. So it's a beast, but how you want to use it, but there's a lot of tools that can help you kind of do it too. If you don't want to do it, you just figure out one of these tools, put it into the calendar, and it just does it all on its own. So
right. And one that it seems to be really popular is it's referred to as Meet Edgar, EDGAR. And that is a schedule for all your social media. You can schedule all of those in advance and then schedule it to push it out to all of your social media platforms simultaneously. So if you have time constraints, staff constraints, that's a really good approach, again, to that. One thing about social media is that with the new algorithms, especially Facebook, it really is targeting. I don't know how many of you have a personal Facebook page, but you seem to see, and you've seen this, I see the same 25 people over and over and over again. And the reason is that algorithm is flagging and it's making those decisions in hopes that it will put in front of you things that you're interested in. So there are ways to trick that algorithm. So for example, if you're going to post something and you really want to get it out there, within the first 20 minutes of you posting it, you want to have as many people like it and share it. Sharing is really important as you can, because if you do that, it tricks the algorithm in thinking, oh, wow, there's something new trending going on. So it actually opens up your audience base to more people that way. So if you can have your closest 50 friends within 15, say, you can schedule it behind the scenes and say, hey, I'm going to post this today at 3:00. Will you please share it by 3:05? It will help boost your numbers and get you and trick that algorithm. So that is one trick that we found just along the way to get it out there. And it is really beneficial. And shares seem to have a little bit more impact as far as getting in front of people and tricking that algorithm than just likes. So that's one thing. So any questions on social media? You have a quiet group. Okay.
I have a comment.
Oh, sure.
I have found, I've sold a lot of art on social media, on Facebook, and I have found that when people make a comment, if you respond, every time they make a comment, every time you respond, it goes back to the top, and it gets viewed by anybody that liked it or their friends, or that commented on it. So it's always good to make sure that you respond.
Absolutely. Yes, that is another wonderful trick. Thanks for sharing that. And as you were, let's see, it just went out of my head. I was thinking of another trick that for using social media. The other thing for social media is the rule of thumb is on social media is for building relationships. Ultimately, it is to connect you so that people can get an experience. And on social media, the rule of thumb is you have to give away 80% to get a 20% return on that investment. So what does that mean? That could be an artist tip that it's about, let's say you have a watercolor class that you have coming up that you're promoting, that you're introducing to everybody, and you are looking for people to register. So the last thing that you do is put the call out to register. First, you might put out a little video of a watercolor tip, whether that's blending paints and then you progressively give that information away in hopes that at the very end, because they've experienced it, they like what they're seeing, they will click to go towards that class and register for that class. Does that make sense for everybody? Kind of one way to use it. Stephanie, I don't know if you have anything to add. No? Okay.
no, I'm good.
Can I share another trick?
Please.
Oh.
I found that a lot of groups didn't want advertising. And so I created a local group about 3 years ago, and now we have 1,200 members, and I welcome anybody that wants to promote their work, and then I promote mine too. So you can do that. Create your own group.
Yeah, groups are a great way to set things up. So you could, depending on what your organization does, and I don't know if you have anything you want to speak to this on, Stephanie, but you can set up, for example, we have what we call the 100-day creative group, and we have our own group that we set up and let people in, and that's what they focus on during that time. And they support each other. And again, we let people in as they request, and that's grown over the time. And it's really built relationships that way. So that's kind of a broad overview of kind of some of the platforms: website, email platforms, CRMs, and then social media. I know it's a lot to think about, and how do you integrate all of that and use it? So I'd like to move on to virtual programming and some considerations if you're planning on going down that route. And again, I think we had 2 people that were willing to do, that are currently doing virtual programming. Is that right? Raise a hand if you are. Let's see here. Okay, looks like I've got 1 person that's doing virtual programming. Sarah, can you share kind of the type of virtual programming that you're doing?
Hey, Lisa, I'm sorry. I am getting kicked out of where I am in my current location. I'm kind of, traveling right now. So I have to get going, unfortunately.
Okay.
So sorry, but anyone, please email me if anyone has any questions with anything, but I'm getting the boot from where I am right now. So I have to move on.
Well, thank you for joining us. Thanks for being.
This is great. Yeah, sorry everybody, but it's awesome. Thank you.
Hi, Stephanie. So Gary, were you going to say something? Okay. So
yeah,
virtual.
I'm here.
Okay. All right. I just saw you light up. I thought maybe you were needing to jump in.
We have 5 minutes remaining before I pull everyone back in.
Okay. All right, so we'll go through this really quick. Virtual programming. So you have a couple of options, and I just realized that I failed to put on here live virtual streaming. There's on-demand virtual, and that's basically the pre-recorded that you have available on your website, or you have a link to it, your YouTube channel, something like that, to where people can watch it and follow along anytime that they want. Then there's also the live virtual, and I'm sure many of you've experienced those. It's the actual live class. It's interactive. It's 2-way interactive, but you have to be there at a certain place and a certain time. And of course, those can be recorded to then be offered as on demand. And then there's hybrid. So as we begin to re-engage and reopen, how do we facilitate both the in-person and the people that want to continue to connect virtually? So a couple advantages with the virtual: there's no boundaries. So what we've seen during the pandemic and during our recovery is that a lot of our members and a lot of people that engage with our organization, there are snowbirds, especially in Northern Michigan. And so through our classes that we've offered and the live virtual, they have been able to join us and continue to stay engaged with what's going on in the organization. And it's been a real advantage for us. Zoom seems to be the most popular, and then there's also Google. So there's a lot of platforms out there that you can choose, but Zoom and Google Hangouts kind of seem to be the most popular. Couple of disadvantages: depending on who your audience you're dealing with, there is a learning curve to learning how to use, and you really need to spend the time with the individual members or your clients or customers to help them kind of navigate how to use some of these platforms. And it's really important. So in our personal experience here at the gallery, a lot of our customers, clients, and members, they were scared to death of technology. And so what we did was we offered to spend some time with them and actually have classes on how to use the technology, before we ever launched any of our programming. And now you should see them. I mean, they're amazing with technology. They're bringing in all kinds of all kinds of platforms. They're on Google, and they're using Zoom, and they're just having a lot of fun with it. And it's really expanded their world. The other thing is it can be expensive, depending on what your needs are and what you're trying to do. But you don't need a lot to get started with virtual classes or virtual programming. Ultimately, if you have a webcam and a laptop, you can do a lot with a webcam and a laptop. So for example, here in front of me, I have a webcam. It's basically on a mic stand that we use, and we use Zoom. So the webcam connects to the laptop, and it's used for any type of hands-on type stuff. So if you're dealing with visual arts, you can use the webcam. It's real simple to use. And then we set up either you can use your iPhone, you can use a laptop as a secondary camera to capture the front. And it's really, really simple, easy to use to help you get started. And then there's a couple of platforms that you can use. So there's Facebook and YouTube, really are kind of the popular platforms that are out there right now. There's also Twitch, but that's a little bit more complicated. And so you can choose to go live on Facebook or YouTube. The thing with those particular platforms is they're not interactive in the sense they're not as robust as Zoom or Google Hangout. But you can interact with chat, and it automatically is recorded. There are several open sources that are available to you. So one that we've used here is known as Be Live. It's an open source platform that allows me to capture and stream live videos while I also can produce those videos. So I can put my logo up there, I can send messages, and it also will push it out to multiple sites. So rather than having to use just Facebook or just YouTube, I can push it out simultaneously across the board to those. So QR codes, really quick. How many use QR codes or are familiar with them? They're basically, we've seen them here before. You see them on packages. There's this real fun symbol here. So QR codes were established right around 2008, 9, 10. And when they first came out, you had to have a special app on your phone to scan them, and then it would take you and provide information to take you to a website. So QR codes now can be used with any cell phone that has a camera on it. So the fun thing about QR codes, which stands for quick response, is that you can be really creative in how to use these. So if you set up a QR code, create a QR code, you can have it attached to a Google form that people fill out as they come into your gallery to collect visitor data. You can have your website attached to that. You can also have, for example, if you have an exhibit up and you want them to know more about the artist, and you can't put all that information when you're curating your exhibit there, but you can use the QR code on a small card that they can actually use to access that artist's information. So QR codes they can be used in a multitude of ways. They're easy to create with QR code builders. There's free QR code builders right on site that you can online that you can find.
Lisa Marie, the other rooms are closing in 20 seconds.
Yep. So that kind of wraps up. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything that they want to share that they're using? No?
Okay. Hello. You know, just to tie out the one thought, I started to jam in at the end of the session on advocacy, talking about the old art building. You went into a big capital campaign in the middle of a pandemic, and you were successful for it. made good advocacy points about making a good ask. But I would also say you also had an organization that you have invested in relationship building and impact and a lot of things. When they talk about, sometimes we think about advocacy, but they say small a, capital A, it's advocacy. We all do and have the ability to do advocacy every single day.
And build relationships, definitely.
Yep. Anyway, well, welcome
Mary.
everyone. Thank you.